Hello and welcome to Video Game Hangover. I'm Randy Dickinson, and I'm in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Hey, it's me, DJ Ross. I am in Mountain View, California.
Each week here on Video Game Hangover, we talk about the games that have been keeping us up at night. This week we're playing Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope, Frog Detective 3 Corruption at Cowboy County, and the final Spooky Saturday game is Heaven Dust 2.
Ooh. Yeah. Rip to Spooky Saturday. Not allowed to be spooky anymore.
No, you have to only be, thankful. Thankful Thursdays.
Thankful Thursday. Yeah.
Doesn't quite lend itself to video gaming as well as Spooky Saturday does.
I'm sure we could come up with something for that.
Sure.
We'll have to work on it, though. Thankful Thursday.
We'll bring it up at the next staff meeting.
There we go.
We'll brainstorm it. Well, I mean, most importantly, nothing spooky about this Saturday. It's just good vibes all around because it is Extra Life 2022 this Saturday.
Oh, it's here. Are you ready?
Yeah. How was that for a forced segue? That was tough. I broke my brain on that. Yeah, it is here. So the moment we've all been waiting for is this Saturday. We're going to play video games for a very, very long time, possibly up to 25 hours, to support children's hospitals in our communities. This is our 9th year of doing this thing, which is crazy awesome. I think that's super fun.
Yeah, it's hard to believe.
Saturday, November 5th, I'm going to start streaming at 8 a.m. Eastern time this Saturday. I'm going to start the day with some Animal Crossing and just go from there. DJ and I will be streaming throughout the course of the day. We will always have something on the feed, plus on our own personal channels. What am I going to do? I'm going to do some Vampire Survivors, as are you at some point.
Yeah.
I'm going to do the Slay the Spire Daily Challenge. I'm going to play some Kirby games. I'm going to play some Splatoon. If you want to play Splatoon 3 with me, we should do that. Definitely hit me up on our Discord or Twitter or something if you're a Splatooner.
You're a Splatoon. What do they call Splatoon people?
I'm not sure. Kids and squids. If you're a kid or a squid, come play Splatoon 3 with me.
Yeah, what if they're an octopus?
I suppose octopuses are tolerated.
Wasn't that a whole thing? They added the octolings in 2. Yes. I don't know where they ended up in 3.
Yeah, I believe they're all still there. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So kids, squids, and octopi are welcome.
Excellent.
What do you got on the docket? Is docket the right word?
Docket?
On the schedule?
Yeah,
the itinerary?
So. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. As usual, I'll be playing the Spelunky Daily Challenge. I'm going to do Spelunky 1 and 2 this year. I'm going to play Trombone Champ.
Excellent.
Perhaps against my better judgment, but we're going to do it. Like you said, some Vampire Survivors. Man, the game came out. It's out of early access.
Oh, wow.
I haven't played it since then, so I'm going to get into whatever they've added for the full release. Should be good.
I've never played it. I will not get a chance to play it until I start streaming it on Saturday. So if you want to see someone stumble their way through the first hour or so of Vampire Survivors, have I got a treat for you?
That's going to be good. Yeah, I'm going to have to tune in for that. What else am I playing? I'm going to play some The Legend of Zelda 2 as my retro game.
Oh, nice.
The Planet Crafter, which is a space sort of gathering and survival game, which I hope is good. It looks very cool. Looks like I could potentially sink a lot of hours into that. And then in the middle of the night, as the evening wears on, I'm going to be playing some spooky stuff. The first of which will be another Chilla's Art game. You may remember I talked about a couple weeks ago. There was a game that sounded too scary to play called The Night Delivery. And I decided, well, I'd better play it. So tune in for that. See how that goes. And then I think the highlight of the afternoon, though, is going to be we are going to co-op some Star Trek Bridge Crew.
Yeah.
A game that neither of us have played, but we're hoping it involves a lot of good sort of just yelling, good-natured yelling, and maybe some techno-babble.
Yeah.
So
pushing buttons and having lightsaber duels and
yeah,
other things that happen in Star Trek.
Lightsabers.
Yeah.
Maybe Darth Vader will show up.
Cool.
Doctor Who will be there.
wait, which this is important. Which Doctor Who?
Oh, the one with the funny tagline.
The good one. The one everybody loves.
Yeah, your favorite Doctor will be there.
Excellent.
No. Not the one that everybody hates that one, but the other one. I don't know. I've never seen
this
Doctor
is the
Who.
multiversus that I want to play, where it's just sort of all of the random sci-fi bullshit from the world of entertainment in one video game.
I thought you were going to say like every Doctor Who fighting each other.
I mean,
is Doctor Who in multiverses?
I don't know.
Oh, are you into multiverses? Should we just we've never spoken about this?
No, I mean, I think it's kind of weird that like Rick and Morty can fight Scooby-Doo, but I don't want to play it. So, yeah, I don't know. I think it's kind of neat that it exists, and people seem to like it. It's free to play, and it's gotten surprisingly positive word of mouth. I listened to another gaming podcast a little while ago, and it's all they could talk about. So, yeah, it is enjoyed by many. I'm not really a fighting game person, so.
Right. Well, we'll have to have a donation incentive if we reach a certain total. Randy will play multiverses as Scooby-Doo. Or
all
whoever.
Scooby-Doo all the time. Yeah.
What a nightmare.
Yeah. But back to reality. We're going to play some Star Trek Bridge Crew.
Back to reality, yes.
Yeah. There's also another co-op outer space sci-fi game called From Space that comes out this week for the Switch that DJ and I have kind of had our eye on, and we're going to co-op that. It's a couple of fun little cartoon characters against wave after wave of brightly colored neon aliens. Yeah, that should be fun as well.
Yeah, so in case you've just lost track of this lightning round of games that we're going to be playing, you can go to VGHangover.com/extralife. You can see the full schedule there, or most of the schedule, let's be honest. To find out when to tune in, we'll definitely have the highlights on there, so you know when to watch Randy playing Vampire Survivors, when to see us playing Star Trek Bridge Crew, all the other stuff. And you can also get a link there to our donation page. So if you are feeling generous, you want to chip in a few dollars towards our campaign, we would love that. That would be very much appreciated.
Yeah.
And also, if you're unable to donate for whatever reason, that's totally fine too. But it would still be awesome if you just drop by the stream at twitch.tv/VGHangover or any of the other links at that Extra Life URL.
Yeah.
And you can just hang out in the chat, see how we're doing, cheer us on, whatever you want to do. Criticize us on our bridge technique and Star Trek Bridge Crew. I don't know what they call it. Yep. Tell us if we're violating Starfleet protocols or something, whatever they do.
Protect DJ from spooky ghosts at 10 p.m. Pacific time. Yeah.
Yes. In previous years, I have done donation incentives during the spooky block where every certain donation milestone, I will turn off one of the lights in my apartment. And I think, well, I'll do that again because that seems to get people motivated, but it's bad for me. So if that sounds like it would be interesting to you, definitely don't miss out on that.
Excellent.
Man, are you excited? I am excited.
Yeah. I have this weird thing, like generally about a week out from Extra Life every year where I'm like, what have I volunteered to do? What have I gotten myself into? And then I get up in the morning and I have an excuse to play video games for like forever. And inevitably at some point, Sarah brings me a giant burrito and I take a lunch break and I fuel up and I eat a burrito and I feel much better. And then you and I play some multiplayer and we get great support from our community and we're constantly blown away by the donations that people sort of roll up for us and donate to this amazing cause. And so I have this sort of like pre-Extra Life, like, but then it happens and it's awesome. And I'm so glad we did it. So, which is like a lot of things in my life. I dread birthday parties and concerts and until I get there and the band starts and I'm like, oh wait, this was a great idea. I'm glad I did this.
Right.
Yep. Yeah. That was a lot. Did that answer your question? Sorry.
No, that was good.
Yeah.
Like I play video games all the time, so it's weird that I would be like excited, like, oh yeah, I'm gonna play video games this weekend.
Yeah.
What a shock. But it's so different when you sort of like schedule something and kind of give yourself permission to play games all Saturday.
Yeah.
Which also sounds weird. It's like, oh yes, I really needed an excuse. Really needed to just permit myself to do this. But
yeah, well, I mean, it is generally this thing that I sort of have to like. I have to find time to do this thing that I enjoy. I have to like to get up before everybody else does, or like stay up a little bit later, or find an hour in the middle of the day or whatever. Because it's a gaming at this point in my life is generally not an appointment.
Right. Yeah. That's exactly it.
Yeah.
Other times it's like, well, I could be doing laundry or like cleaning my apartment or whatever, but instead I'm just going to play Vampire Survivors. But Saturday, just nothing else scheduled.
Yep. Pajamas all day, messy hair, don't care. Let's just do this.
All right. Well, hope to see you, the listener, on the stream at the very least, because it should be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Cool. So again, friendly reminder, that is this Saturday, November 5th if you're listening to this on the day that this episode drops, you have less than 48 hours to prepare yourself for this insanity. Go to VGHangover.com/extra life for more info. Or just hop into our Discord, follow us on Twitter, all of those other things. You can get links to all of that stuff at VGHangover.com.
Yeah.
Cool.
But what else we got going on?
Speaking of video games, we played some.
Did we play that Bayonetta 3?
No. I didn't play Bayonetta 2 yet.
You didn't play Bayonetta 2?
No, I've not. I like the first one. The first one was fun. I had a good time with that. But it is generally not a thing that I don't know, I pursue. I get super excited about.
Not an appointment game?
No, not really. See, it all ties back to that. Yeah. Yeah, I stumble into games like that sometimes where, like Bayonetta, the first Bayonetta, or some of the Devil May Cry games. What's the developer that does all of that stuff?
What, Devil May Cry? Is Capcom.
And Bayonetta?
Oh, no, Bayonetta is Platinum? Yes.
Yeah. Platinum, yeah. Platinum did a Devil May Cry game as well, did they not?
Did they? I don't think so. They've always been...
What was the fifth Devil May Cry that was like industrial music and like an American Dante and everybody was angry about it?
Oh, that was Ninja Theory.
Okay. I like that game.
Yeah.
I played that, I don't know, kind of accidentally, but I remember having a very good time with it. And that sort of led to me playing Bayonetta, the first Bayonetta. And games like this are fun. And I'm not like a technical gamer. I don't care to memorize a lot of like complicated moves and button presses and stuff like that. So I thought those games are super approachable and had great settings. So just like being able to button mash and survive your way through them, and both super stylish. You certainly cannot get past the attention to detail and just absolute bonkers weirdness that goes into a Bayonetta game. So
yeah, it's very weird.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
I kind of turned myself around on Bayonetta during this year's backlog attack. Well, I wasn't really into the first one, but I felt like I just didn't get it. So I played Bayonetta 2 and was like, okay, I kind of get it. So
see your value.
Yeah, maybe at some point I will play Bayonetta 3, but like yourself, I wasn't lining up for it. I think I'll wait a little bit. It's just come out, so I'll wait till I'm back in the mood for some more Bayonetta.
It seems to be liked.
People seem to like it. Yeah, it seems like a Bayonetta game.
Well, good. Yeah, I mean, if it was Bayonetta 3 and people started playing it and they were like, "This isn't Bayonetta, this is Gears of War," that would be a weird flex. That would just be a strange choice.
That would be very strange. Yeah, I don't think people would be into it as much. Yeah.
And that game was in development for a long time. Bayonetta 3 had been teased years and years and years ago. And generally when a development goes on for quite that long and games sort of go dark and disappear for a long time, it's maybe not always the best sign.
No.
So when it landed and the reviews were positive, I was like, all right, well, good for those guys. Dragging it across the finish line. That's fantastic.
Yeah. Tell you what else I turned around on is The Frog Detective. And that sort of came with our backlog attack as well, because it was, yes.
Yeah.
Very good summer for second chances.
For second chances? No. That's not that's not my mantra. I generally like burn me once. Um, but yeah, you and I played the first Frog Detective, and I don't remember either of us really liking it.
Yeah, although it was one of those games where I didn't care for it, but I suspected that I was the problem. I was like, why don't I enjoy this? I should enjoy this because everybody else enjoys it. It was a little bit like Bayonetta to a degree.
Oh, I've had that experience with video games where I'm like, people love this. Why am I not into it?
Yeah. Well, then what do you do next? You're just like content to dislike it.
Yeah. No, it's the children who are wrong.
Yeah. Well, you never go back and give something a second chance. You're like, maybe it'll be hit different this time.
I don't know. I'm sure there's examples of that happening throughout my gaming history of me sort of bouncing off a game and coming back to it later. I distinctly recall at some point on this show saying, man, I'm really glad I gave it a second chance. I just don't remember what those games are.
Oh,
Sorry. Yeah.
Just not as memorable as that Frog Detective, I guess.
Right, exactly. No, I recall firmly coming down on the side of I don't get it with Frog Detective.
Well, anyway, so I played Frog Detective 3, which came out last week.
Cool. There's 3 of these.
There's 3 of them now. Yeah. I feel like I really willed this into existence because it was kind of in the same situation as Bayonetta 3 for a while. It was like, we know they're working on it, but when is it coming out? Oh, it's out this month. Oh, terrific. It's out mere months after I played Frog Detective 1 and 2 again. What are the odds? So I felt almost obligated. Like, it's also just much less of a commitment than Bayonetta 3 to play Frog Detective 3. Because these have, like, the first 2 have been, I wouldn't say bite-sized, but they're on the shorter side of things as far as video games go. Like, you can get through each one in about an hour, maybe an hour and a half if you're feeling especially relaxed that afternoon.
These are not Persona games or Dragon Quest
They're
games.
Definitely not Persona games.
You could play 100 Frog Detectives in the time it takes to play Persona 5.
Oh man, if only there were 100 Frog Detective episodes.
I'm like, I can only imagine you popping onto the show to review Frog Detective 97.
Yeah.
The case of something, something, something.
Will it be better than a Frog Detective 96? That's what we're here to discuss.
Right, exactly. Yep. Doesn't move the genre forward. Really just seems like a lateral move.
Well,
the
anyways.
Frog Detective genre.
It is kind of its own genre at this point. Yeah.
So don't allow me to condescend this thing anymore. What is Frog Detective, DJ?
Well, it's another sort of like narrative adventure. I wouldn't say it's like exactly a walking simulator because you are supposedly going around and doing detective things.
Detecting, yes.
Yeah, you are detecting things. But, fans of the first 2 Frog Detective games will find this very familiar because a lot of it is just you playing as the Frog Detective, going around and talking to wacky characters, and trying to solve, first of all, trying to solve an overarching mystery, which is why you've been sent to this place to begin with. But you always end up requiring the assistance of sort of these local goofy characters. And in order to earn their trust and get them to help you out, you have to solve some problem that they're having. Usually completely unrelated to the case, but that's sort of the fun of it. It's just part of the weirdness. So in this one, this is actually, I forgot that, even just having played it several months ago, that Frog Detective 2 kind of left off on a cliffhanger.
Oh.
With the Frog Detective being sent off to a new case in Cowboy County. And they didn't even explain what was going on at the end of Frog Detective 2. But you start up Frog Detective 3 and it gives you this nice little recap in a very goofy sort of Frog Detective appropriate style.
Previously on Frog Detective?
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, because for most people, it's been much longer since they've played Frog Detective 2, presumably.
Okay, that makes sense. Sure.
Yeah, and I was like, I kind of remember what happened, but yeah, there are some details it was nice to get a little recap on. But so anyway, you get sent off to Cowboy County, and it is revealed that the crime that's taken place is all the hats have been stolen. So you need to find out what's going on with the missing hats, who took all the hats, and why. And you're very quickly introduced to some of the characters in Cowboy County, most notably the brand new sheriff in town, who is this incredibly suspicious-looking mole. So it's like, okay, something's going on with this mole. But then it just turns into more or less what you'd expect from a frog detective game. Like I said, you go around talking to people and having these hilarious conversations with them, and they will introduce you to whatever problem they're experiencing. Like somebody who's just sort of can't stir up inspiration to paint. So you just need to figure out how you can solve that and like help them out a little bit.
And then they provide you with some information that moves your case forward a little bit somehow.
Yes, they provide you with, like, I want to say just a typical sort of adventure game item that, it just goes in your inventory, and eventually you meet another character who needs that specific item. And you're like, aha, I have that because I helped someone with an unrelated scenario, but luckily now I have this item. Yeah. Like at one point, you solve somebody's problem and they're like, oh, I don't know how to repay you. Here, take this ladder. And you're like, oh, wow. So that seems like not a very typical reward, but definitely a useful item to have in a video game. I'm sure this will come in handy somewhere. So that was very good.
Your next clue is on a high shelf somewhere.
Yeah, something like that. But I had a lot of fun with it. It was in my newfound appreciation for these frog detective games. It was kind of refreshing to come back and just have a new one to get into. It doesn't stray too far from sort of the mold established in the first two games. Although what's really sort of unique to this one is Cowboy County, which is the area that the game takes place in, is enormous for some reason. Like you have the main street, which looks like sort of your typical like Western like cowboy movie main street. But then there's this expansive sort of desert region around it, which is just huge for some reason. There's not a lot of attractions around it. But it's there, and I guess just to make traversal a little easier, Frog Detective has a little like razor scooter that he gets at the start of the game, and you can just ride the scooter around and do scooter tricks and like go off ramps and hills and stuff.
Wow.
Which ultimately is like not really important to or like necessary to the rest of the game, but it's just kind of a fun and silly thing to do.
It's the Grand Theft Auto of frog detecting games.
It is a little bit. I saw him using this scooter in some of the trailers, and I thought, well, that's sort of fun. I wonder, like, how much are you going to be required to use a scooter? And the answer is, like, not really at all. It just seems like this arbitrary thing that they've added in. But it's great. It's just, in line with all the other silly stuff in these Frog Detective games. It's like, sure, why wouldn't he have a scooter? Why wouldn't you take a break from solving this case to do flips off a little like hill or something?
Excellent.
Actually, I should correct myself because I don't believe he actually does flips. He does spins rather. Maybe they didn't have the budget to add the flips in, but it's still, I had a good time doing some scooter tricks for a while. And
awesome.
then just overall, just kind of a fun, silly, very positive game. It's very weird or kind of reassuring playing a game where you kind of understand that there are not really any stakes and things are probably going to work out. Like it's going to be a happy ending.
Yeah.
But, in a world where there are lots of other stressful games or stressful stories that you can sort of take in, it's nice to just know in the back of your head, like, oh yeah, eventually your Frog Detective is going to solve this thing and it's going to be fine. Or at least that's what I thought was going to happen, because this has also been billed as like the final chapter in the Frog Detective story.
No.
And like, who knows what that means? Like, I don't know presumably that means everything's going to work out, but given sort of the creator, Grace Brooksner's just like strange personality and sense of humor, who knows what's going to happen? This could potentially go off in 100 completely weird directions. So as much as I had an idea of how it was going to wrap up, I was also totally open to the possibility of it's just concluding in a completely unforeseen way.
I mean, it's awesome that, the developer here is like uber indie, right? It's like a 2-person development team, right?
Yeah, it's like 2 people working on it, and then there's the composer.
Yeah. So, and I don't know how to gauge sort of the size or scale of a video game phenomenon, but, Frog Detective's a bit of a thing, right? I mean, like,
I think so. I really hope it's a thing.
Yeah. So I you don't want to lose your cash cow. I hope, these guys have a plan for continuing to, challenge themselves and do some fun stuff, but also, maybe make some more money off of the Frog Detective.
Oh, you mean like make Frog Detective 4?
Or something else in the Frog Detective universe. Maybe it's the adventures of Lobster Cop next or something like that. Yeah,
sure.
Just go back to the well, but do something fun and sort of appropriately on brand.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that. I could see them doing like a Frog Detective spin-off, but also I think it's very deliberate them deciding that this is going to be the last Frog Detective game, because I feel like Frog Detective has had its run. And I feel like they're ready for something else. I don't know if that even like includes continuing to make video games. Who knows? But I'm very curious to see what's going to happen next, because they've their development history has mostly been Frog Detective.
Yeah,
there was a fun little one-off like Halloween game that came out like a year or two ago, but it was very sort of slight. It was just like a silly like Halloween thing, and very much in the vein of Frog Detective. So I'm kind of hoping that, whatever comes next, probably too soon for them to even be thinking about that or discussing it anyway. I hope it is just a shock.
Right. Frog Detective DLC.
Yeah, no. It turns out they've been tapped to create the next Silent Hill game or something like that. Who knows?
That would be a pretty impressive pivot.
Yeah.
I mean, I would love to see a Silent Hill game in the Frog Detective art style.
I know. I was just thinking, when I first said that, I thought, okay, so they'll just go full horror or whatever. But what if they just made a stupid comedy Silent Hill? I would also be completely down with that.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like the Silent Hill brand is being sort of spun in a number of different directions. It'll be interesting to see if any of those.
Well, I mean,
three versions of a Silent Hill game
largely the
currently.
same direction, but yes, 3 different versions of it, 3 different takes on it.
I mean, that's kind of neat. That's ambitious in a way that I was not expecting Silent Hill to be. So,
yeah,
why not do a goofy Frog Detective Silent Hill?
Why not? Well, yeah, Silent Hill as developed by Worm Club,
sure, right.
developer, not necessarily Frog Detective. Maybe there's a Frog Detective like reference in it somewhere. Maybe your main character in the new Silent Hill game rides a razor scooter.
Yeah. And is a detective.
Yeah. And also is a frog. And okay, so now we're just back into it.
Oh, no, wait, we're back. Yeah.
Yeah. Too much. We've gone too far. But anyway, so as a newly, born again Frog Detective fan, had a great time with Frog Detective 3. Completely, wholeheartedly recommend people check it out. It's now on Xbox, I believe, or is that correct? I should get my facts straight. It's on some form of Game Pass, and I believe you can play all 3 of them on there.
Oh, fun.
So that's exciting.
Good. Cool. Yeah, I mean, this was a thing that you and I had stumbled upon, I think, on itch, right? At some point, itch.io. I'm not sure how it sort of first came to our attention, but yeah.
I don't know how I first heard about this. But awesome. I'd love to go back and find out, because it's just like it was just a weird like indie game with this cartoon frog. Man, I wish I remembered how I first learned about the Frog Detective. But anyway, I'm glad he's back. Glad he had a very satisfying final chapter, potentially final chapter. Who knows?
Proposed subtitle for this week's episode: I wish I remembered how I first learned about Frog Detective.
How I met the Frog Detective.
I know what you Frog Detectives last summer.
Ooh. Sounds like another horror spin-off.
We've gone in a different direction, yeah. Well, good. I mean, did not quite get the appeal of the first one, but it's cool that this continues to have a life, and that these, clearly hardworking indie developers have found a thing that resonates with people. And kudos to you for coming back around on it and giving it another try. Yeah.
I have to say, the first one is still fairly slight compared to the other 2. And
so not the best example of the Frog Detective potential.
Well, I think they've only become more refined in all aspects. So just the puzzles are more interesting. The writing is better. Not like it was terrible, but there's just like, I feel like there's more to it. It's more sort of like the vision of what a Frog Detective game is clearer as they continue on. So if you played Frog Detective 1, you're just like, this is not doing it for me.
Yeah.
Maybe it's worth checking out Frog Detective 2 and 3.
Okay. I mean, it's an hour of my life. How bad could it be?
Yeah, not a huge investment.
Yeah. Are they on Steam? Can I put this on my Steam Deck?
Yeah, they're on Steam.
Cool.
I don't know if they work on the Steam Deck. I can't imagine what the issue would be.
Yeah. Too graphically intensive.
Right. Too much detail.
You can run Elden Ring, but you cannot run Frog Detective 2.
Right.
It's probably the text. If the text is big enough to be seen on, let's be honest, the shitty Steam Deck screen.
What's wrong with the Steam Deck screen? Is it bad?
It's not great. No, it's not a good screen. No.
Oh, no.
And maybe I'm just spoiled by my SWOLED Switch, but yeah, it's painful to go put down the SWOLED and to pick up the Steam Deck and try to look at a video game on it.
That's a little disappointing. I haven't heard that before.
I think it has sort of found a life as the Steam Deck as an emulator device for a lot of people, or a way if it's important to you to play Elden Ring on a bus. But yeah, I don't really think the screen is a showcase by any means.
Oh man, well,
yeah.
Hold up for that
gamble
Steam
every
Deck
time.
too.
Like, will it run? Can it run? Even if it says it runs, can I find any information about it running before I spend $20 on it? Yeah, it's still a bit of
most stuff. I feel like most stuff is gonna run unless you're playing some weird thing from 10 years ago.
Yeah, and I think you're probably right. I think most things do run, but is it going to be like a comfortable experience? Like, are the buttons going to line up? Can you see the text on the screen?
Oh, sure. Yeah, that's an
actual
concern.
Yeah. So, yeah, again, a lot of these games are not meant to be mobile experiences or played on mid-resolution screens. So, yeah, so the Steam Deck for me still seems to be like much more experimental and like require more tinkering than I want it to be. So it's by default not the first place I want to play video games.
Sure.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to turn your fun Frog Detective thing into me bitching about the Steam Deck.
Oh no, that's fine. That's fine.
I had an experience in the past week where I was sort of like, nope, I still don't care about my Steam Deck.
Oh no! Wait, what game was it?
What was I trying to play on it?
Well, didn't mean to put you on the spot. I'll let you think about it.
I don't remember what I was trying to load up, but again, I was listening to some podcaster on Twitter and heard about a video game and went, oh, maybe I can run it on the Steam Deck, and then it didn't do the thing, and I had already spent money on the game.
I'm pretty sure they will refund you for that. Like, Steam has a pretty decent refund policy, don't they?
Yeah. Well, then I get into my own sort of guilt cycle about like, well, I just gave this developer $20. Should I take it back? I mean, because I can't figure out how to run it.
True. Yeah. Well, good for you.
It was a donation.
Thinking about the developer.
Yeah. Well.
I will reassure you that the font in Frog Detective 3 is quite large, so excellent. I think that would not be an issue.
And also, I am old, and that is helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Mostly I was thinking about how legible it would be on the Steam Deck, but it's also fair.
Get my good glasses.
So what have you been playing not on your Steam Deck?
Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope.
Is that how you're supposed to say this? It's Mario plus Rabbids?
That is how it is listed on the cover of the game.
Okay. I was just curious. Like, I've never heard anybody say it out loud.
Oh, Mario and Rabbids? Is that what you're looking for? Mario and?
I don't know. I would have said Mario and Rabbids, but it is kind of curious that it's a plus. Mario plus Rabbids.
Yeah. And that's it. That's the whole review.
That's the whole thing. Well, I was like, it is kind of like Mario plus Rabbids because they're like Rabbids versions of the Mario characters, right?
Right. Yes.
I mean, I don't know how much this is intentional. I don't know how much thought they put into
it's a Mario
punctuation.
Game plus the Rabbids are in it.
Yes. Despite our best efforts.
Yes. Yeah. Rabbids are a very polarizing thing. I think. I think they sort of occupy a weird like pop culture space similar to the Minions, where I'm not the target.
Strong Minion energy.
Yes, I'm not the target audience, and I just sort of look at it and I go, okay, I don't get it, but like, it's not for me. That's fine. I don't have to, like, not everything has to be geared towards my oddly specific tastes.
I remember the first time I saw one, It was like a Wii game, right? It was like one of the first games on the Wii.
Yeah, aren't they like secondary characters in Rayman games?
Yeah, it was like a Rayman game.
Yeah. And then they got their
like,
own thing. It was like a Wii party game featuring this sidekick, essentially.
Like it wasn't a proper Rayman game, I think. It was like Rayman plus the Rabbids, which were new.
Yeah.
And I saw that and I was like, oh, a Rabbid. Like, that's kind of cute because I just, the first time I saw one, it was just standing there or whatever. And it didn't open its mouth.
To speak. Yeah.
Yeah. But as soon as that happens, it's like, oh, God, what? I don't like this anymore.
Yeah. Yes. I think like the Minions, again, it's a lot of sort of nonsense noises and screaming. And again, I'm not the target audience for that. So those Minions movies make $1 bajillion. And, Rabbids games clearly have sold a number of copies over the course of Ubisoft's repeated attempts to make money off of it. So someone was buying these things. But so yeah, the proposition of sort of adding Rabbids to a Mario game. And oh, by the way, it's not a traditional Mario game. It's not a 3D platformer in the way that you sort of would expect a Mario game to be. It's a turn-based strategy game like XCOM.
Sure.
It's just sort of the weirdest pitch in, I don't know, anybody must have heard in a long time. But the first one was good.
People love it.
Was generally very well received, was a pleasant surprise, was sort of modest in its application of Rabbids' insanity, and presented a pretty, substantial challenge once you got into it. I think it was smart in that it sort of started off as kind of baby's first strategy game and kind of walked you through a lot of like core mechanisms for how strategy games work and how a grid-based movement works and how you take turns and things like that. And I had modest experience with some of those things. And a lot of those things are elements that carry over from just RPG games and in general.
So you played XCOM, right?
Yeah, I've played some of XCOM. Yeah.
All right.
Played some XCOM, quite a bit of XCOM 2, in fact.
Ooh.
And Fire Emblem games, things like that.
Sure.
Well, what's the most recent one? The Yakuza 7 is a turn-based strategy game, is it not? Right?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't put it in the same category as XCOM, but sure.
Sure, but that has elements of like where you stand and where your characters are versus the other characters determine how much damage they do.
It's closer on the scale than like Final Fantasy or Dragon Quest.
Sure. Yes, I agree with that. So, but yeah, the first Mario and Rabbids game, Kingdom Battle, I believe it was subtitled, got pretty intense in the later hours. It had a weird sort of grindiness to it, and I think I sort of bounced off of it at the end because it just seemed like a lot more work than I wanted to put into a Mario plus Rabbids video game. And you feel real limited, I think. XCOM in particular, I think, is a game about sort of limits. It's about like, your gamer instinct, my gamer instinct is to run and gun sometimes, or to like pick the biggest gun and the best place to stand and just shoot everybody or whatever. Strategy games like this obviously are you have to put a little more thought into things like that. You have to put a little more strategy, and sometimes the biggest gun is not the best one, and keeping your team huddled up together is maybe not always the best idea, and et cetera, et cetera. So you definitely have to be much more thoughtful and methodical, and every move has consequences in a lot of ways, particularly in an XCOM game where they are without guilt going to wipe out your entire team in a single move. Yeah. But I've digressed, obviously. So yeah, the first Mario & Rabbids was a pleasant surprise. The second one, the new one here, Sparks of Hope, is and continues the vision, I think, but definitely feels a little more free, a little more refined. It takes some of the, I guess, the kind of the conceits of a traditional Mario 3D open world action game, and builds the game a little more around that structure than the predecessor did. The grid is gone. And you have just sort of a field of movement. And each character on your team has a little glowy space where they can move and take shelter or, use one of their 2 moves per turn to get to a vantage point, or get to higher ground, or hide, or heal, or use an item. And it's all your traditional Mario items, obviously, and they all do the things that you would expect them to do. And then, everybody sort of explores the the battlefield that way. You get into a good vantage point, you take your shots, or you bide your time and heal up and wait for the next opportunity to take a shot. And then it's the enemy's turn, and they have the same sort of rule set as you, as they can heal each other and they can move and they can get into vantage points and lather, rinse, repeat. And therein lies the fun. So I wasn't sure what to expect. I think most of the strategy games that I've played have relied pretty heavily on using that grid and using very sort of like specific kind of rules and, again, limitations around how movement happens and how you plot out your moves and stuff like that. And this feels very sort of liberating in a weird way to be able to sort of like run around the field and experiment with different sort of places to stand. And like, can I see well from here? Should I stand here or should I hide behind a box? Should I put Luigi up on the hill with he has a giant crossbow.
Oh.
That the further away, this is the interesting thing about Luigi's sort of bow and arrow kit, is that the further away the enemy is that he's focusing on, the more damage his weapon does.
Okay.
So there's like this whole strategy of sort of like leave Luigi as far behind as possible. And again, my instinct in games like this is sort of like everybody moves in unison, keep everybody real tight, keep the team together, because you never know when you'll need healing or you'll never need to back up or to hide behind somebody or something like that. But the game sort of channels you into a lot of scenarios where you really just have people kind of all over the place. And by people, I mean Mario and Rabbids all over the battlefield, doing kind of their thing. Yeah, it's really fun. And it's a bit of a thinker. I think it's cool in that, it operates perfectly on the Switch. They found a way to make all of these, seemingly sort of complex movements and decisions happen with a fairly limited number of buttons on a controller. And again, sort of similar to the approach in the early hours of the first Mario and Rabbids game, it does give you a bit of a crash course on like, this is how a strategy game works. And you get little asides, little like detours where you'll get a little like a mini battle almost against sort of two enemies where you get to experiment with a new strategy you've learned or a new weapon you've picked up, or how to target two enemies at one time and do two shots. Because Mario can dual wield with his little laser pistols.
Mario's laser pistols?
Everybody has a gun in this. It's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, but I expect him to have like, I don't know, like a plunger gun or something.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be super on brand, but oddly,
something a little more like Mario themed. But he's just got laser guns.
He has
that's
two.
Cool.
Yeah, he dual wields laser pistols, and they are big, like Samus Metroid style, like arm cannons, essentially. His whole hand fits inside of the laser cannon.
Also, I don't know if I would have made Mario out to be a dual wielder. I don't know. I mean, who knows? It's not really... it's hard to draw a direct line from previous Mario games into Mario, like what weapon Mario would wield in XCOM. But I don't know, like dual wielding arm cannons doesn't feel like what I would go with.
Yeah. I mean, none of this is... it probably goes without saying, is violent or feels weird. But yeah, the first time Luigi pulls back on his giant crossbow and snipes somebody from across the map, you're like, oh, okay. Well, that's a weird flex for Luigi, but cool. That's awesome.
It'd be great if everybody did have like, Mario's got a mushroom gun and the princess has, I don't know, like a parasol or something.
Yeah.
And then Luigi just has a sniper rifle. Like, where'd you even get that?
But I mean, there's enough in Mario canon that you can probably pull from. If you did sort of the greatest hits of Mario games, Luigi has the backpack from the Luigi's Mansion games.
Yeah, he's got the vacuum thing.
Yeah, integrate that somehow into the game. Luigi has fireballs and what else does I'm sorry, not Luigi. Mario has fireballs and Cappy. You could probably do a Cappy possession thing if you wanted to really sort of pull from the greatest hits of Mario.
Sure.
So yeah, I think there's enough.
Can you throw a turnip in this?
I've not found turnips yet. There's other things you can throw. Bombs. There's little bombs on the field. And you can, if you use one move to like stomp them, they become vulnerable and they start ticking like a bomb does. Obviously, you can use your second move to pick them up and run with him as super fast, and then pitch him in the direction of your enemies. They'll take out a bunch of cover. They'll knock down cover, and they'll also take out enemies that are sort of in the area of effect. but you have a very quick, like super fast timer on those. You have to make, very clear and quick decisions on how you're going to best deploy your bomb, lest it sort of go off in your hands.
So is it kind of real time as you're moving around then?
A few of the sort of elements of the game require real time decision making, but mostly it's essentially the game is on pause while you decide what you want to do.
Okay.
It's just those bombs are going to explode, so you have to be quick about how you deploy them.
It reminds me a lot of, I don't know if you ever played Valkyria Chronicles.
No, it's on my list. People love those games.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's interesting because it's like turn-based, but you're not really on a grid. You just have free movement over this battlefield.
Oh, interesting.
And then you have a stamina bar, which sort of dictates how much you can move during a turn. But as you're taking your turn, you're just getting shot at by enemy troops. So it's important for you to take a safe route to wherever you're trying to get, and you have to make sure you end your turn behind cover, or else you will just continue to get shot as your character is unable to move. But when you're saying they don't have a grid anymore, and you kind of have slightly more freedom of movement, I thought, oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Because it really reminded me of that. I thought that was a very sort of refreshing take on the type of game.
Yeah, it feels cool in this. I mean, nobody's taking shots at you, which is probably, a concession to the intended audience, maybe. That might be a little frustrating. But yeah, it feels very liberating to be able to kind of experiment a little bit and try to put everybody in kind of slightly different positions, because you can continue to move until you use your first action. So you can alternate between all the characters on your team, and ultimately you get up to, I think, 4 people on your party. And you can sort of jockey them around their little area of effect, their little bubble of movement. And it's not a stamina bar. I'm not sure how they're dictating sort of how far characters can move. But you look at little boundaries on the map that show you how far you can go. Yeah. So until you sort of deploy some choice, I'm going to use an item, I'm going to do a team jump, which means you run into one of the people on your team and they basically throw you in the air, and you can cover a ton of territory in a very short period of time, and on a couple of other things that you can do that are similarly sort of team based. You can continue to move around and look for sort of good positions and good places to stand and hide and stuff like that until you make that decision of how to attack.
Okay, yeah, sounds a little bit leaning towards the XCOM side.
Yeah. And the sparks of hope in the title are this other little element that you can kind of pick up and unlock in the course of the game. And they're basically little shinies, little stars from like a Mario Galaxy game, but they have rabbit ears because it's a Mario plus Rabbids thing.
It's not. It should have been shines of hope.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, what's a spark is not a thing from a Mario game, right? This is a new thing?
I don't believe so, yeah. I didn't make that connection, but you're right. But they're essentially modifiers. You can assign them to the people on your team, and they have different sort of effects on how you play. So they can increase your weapon damage. Mario, I have one on Mario right now early in the game where he can, if anybody's standing within this proximity around Mario, all of their weapons do an additional 20% damage.
Oh, that's excellent.
Yeah, so they're fun little ways of kind of manipulating the stats in the game and the influence that your character has on other people sort of around them, and on the weapons that you're using and on the power-ups and things like that. And it allows you to essentially kind of remix the game. All the characters in your team can have a different spark assigned to them at a different time. And you can swap out people from your team. So if you don't want to have Luigi on your team anymore, you can have Rabbid Luigi or Rabbid Peach or any number of other characters inevitably that you get to unlock.
That's so weird.
and you get to add all of these little spark modifiers to them that do different, statistical upgrades or improvements, or maybe a disadvantage in exchange for something else. Kind of manipulate the world of the game and how everything works in a way that hopefully is advantageous.
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah.
That's fun. That's
it's cool.
Interesting little spin on it.
It's been fun to sort of unlock those and sort of see what they do and how they kind of work with each other and stuff like that. So yeah, it's cool. It's it's this sort of new, that wasn't in the first game. Obviously it is new to the sequel. It's in the title, in fact, of the sequel. And it's just kind of a fun way of manipulating the rules of the game, essentially.
Yeah.
The Rabbid stuff is pretty pretty not obnoxious. I think there's a lot of balance has gone into making them certainly part of the game. And obviously Nintendo didn't develop this, Ubisoft did, and they have obviously an invested interest in sort of maintaining Rabbids as a viable gaming presence. But they're not super annoying, at least thus far that I've played anyways. And I put quite a few hours into this thing. This is one of those sort of like, maybe I'll jump into a quick match before bed, and then it's 2.5 hours later. And so yeah,
is that because the one battle is that long, or you just
no? It's super addictive. It's super like, I can do one more. Oh, that was really fun. Let's do it. You get an option at the end of each little encounter of like, do you want to replay it? And I'm like, oh, that's kind of a fun ask. Like, do I want to go back and like change the rules, or like now that I know the map a little bit better, would I approach it in a different way? I've not done a ton of that because it seems like, well, I've done the thing, but it's just kind of cool that like the default is you get two options at the end of a battle like that, an encounter. One is replay and the other one is continue.
It's not like a do-over. It's like do it again.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. So it's cool. It's super approachable. I think it's if you're a listener and you're like, geez, I'm not into the whole strategy game thing. I think this is a really unique and fun way to sort of to push you out of your comfort zone a little bit on something that is not going to go super hard on you, that is not going to bring sort of a level of XCOM or Fire Emblem kind of intensity to a strategy game. And you do it with sort of recognizable characters and kind of a fun world. And Mario and his crew have a spaceship and they bounce around from different planets. There's a little bit of Mario Galaxy to it. And so it's a caper. It's an adventure in the way that you would expect a Mario game to be. There's a fun overworld where it's you and all the little people in your band sort of running around and picking up coins and shaking trees and stuff like that, looking for power-ups. So it pushes all of the buttons that you would want a Mario game to push. But when it gets into those fun battles, it's this whole other sort of layer of kind of interesting and fun technical things that you get to explore.
It kind of seems like the typical Mario approach to these spin-off games. It's like,
sure.
Don't like tennis? Well, what if Mario is playing tennis?
Right.
Don't like, insert other genre here.
Yeah. And I mean, that's always my answer for those things, is that like, I don't want to play a sports game unless it's Mario playing that sport. I'm not interested in driving games. And they're always
sort of like simplified just enough. So it's like, oh yeah, well, I wouldn't play Gran Turismo, but maybe Mario Kart. Right. Do some kart racing instead.
Hours and hours of Mario Kart. Exactly.
Yeah. Although in this case, you do play XCOM, so that's also kind of interesting.
I don't know if I would say that I do play XCOM. I have played XCOM.
Well, you said you play a lot of XCOM. Yeah, you're not currently playing XCOM, but you don't play this and you're just like, oh, well, it's dumbed down quite a bit from the games I'm used to. Like, it's still, like, you're still into it.
Oh, yeah, very much so, yeah. It's funny, the things about, like, XCOM that I recall most fondly is the base building and base management part of that. I liked that more than actually sort of like responding to the calls and fighting the aliens and stuff like that. I liked going back to like the Area 51 HQ at XCOM and like, oh, you have to build a lab, you have to build a library and executive offices and stuff like that. I enjoyed the whole like base building part of that game. I didn't like, well, I did like it, but I didn't find it as satisfying because the consequences of doing it poorly were so devastating. Yeah.
Did you ever pursue like just a pure base building game based on that?
Outside of the XCOM thing, I played that Fallout mobile game. That was a base building game, essentially.
Oh man,
right?
Yeah, that's the one I was thinking of.
Fallout Shelter.
Yeah.
I played quite a bit of that. I think you and Paul, I think we had a cycle of that where we were quite into it for a while. Did we not?
I don't think I played that one. I was busy playing Tiny Death Star, which is it's more or less the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. What's sort of the gold standard for a base building game? Do you know? Do you have a sense of that?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's exactly the same thing, but I would think of stuff like what is that thing, like amusement park simulator?
Oh.
Is that the
Dungeon Keeper? Maybe that's I've played Dungeon Keeper in the past.
Have you? Oh. I could see those being grouped together, but one of those sort of like theme park management games, or like not exactly Sim City or a city builder, but it starts to get into that sort of zone.
Yeah, I think of SimCity and those kinds of games as being very stressful.
Those just feel like you're like, oh, Oh, you didn't, you don't have a degree in economics and city planning? Well, you're going to have a hard time with this one.
I had a class in college, and it's been a while since I've been in college, so it must have been a very early SimCity game, but I had a civics class, and we had to play a simulation in SimCity, and I remember it being very frustrating.
Yeah. That was always kind of my thing. It was like, I just want to build a cool city. I don't have to worry about, how much I'm going to raise taxes this quarter.
Yeah. There's the ones where you're like run a hospital and or an amusement park and stuff like that. And
yeah.
People get angry because there's no bathrooms in your amusement park.
Oh man, well maybe if Mario had an amusement park, maybe I'd play that game.
I'm sure Ubisoft is working on a pitch.
Yeah, geez. Well, as long as there aren't Rabbids in it, because I'm not going to play a game with Rabbids in it. Like, as good as this sounds, I'm just like, I don't know if I can do it. Surely there's a new Valkyria Chronicles out that I can go check out instead.
Yeah. So this is Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope. I've put quite a few hours into it so far since it came out last week. I'm a little bit hooked on it. I think it's a lot of fun. It's just sort of my level of intensity. I think it's got some fun little things to experiment with, and the whole Sparks thing is super fun. Yeah, I think they've changed it just enough to make it sort of feel fresh and make it feel like a kind of a new approach to how to do this turn-based thing with Mario. It definitely sort of feels like it kind of carries the torch for Kingdom Battle. So I think it's easy to say if you enjoyed the first one, you'd probably like this one.
Nice.
Yeah. I'm going to stream some of this. Actually, this is on my list for Saturday.
Cool.
I think I'm kind of mid-game at this point. I'm not sure how long it is, but I put quite a few hours into it. So we'll jump into some fun battles on my stream on Saturday afternoon.
Cool. Maybe I'll check it out. Yeah.
Tell me about your final spooky game. Final-ish spooky game, DJ.
My final spooky game. I played Heaven Dust 2, which is an isometric take on Resident Evil, or kind of a classic survival horror game. It actually it really clearly is inspired by Resident Evil, in that it starts off with kind of a special forces team being deployed because there's like some sort of like biohazard emergency. There's some outbreak taking place. They're like, oh, okay, seems strangely familiar.
Very familiar, yes.
Yeah, and then you wake up, you're just like some random guy in a sinister-looking laboratory, and you're like, there's nobody else around for some reason, and you're forced to just like scavenge for supplies. Eventually, you find all your classic sort of Resident Evil / survival horror stuff. You get a little pistol and some green herbs, of course, and it's not first aid spray in this. I think it's just sort of generic painkillers. I think maybe first aid spray is a little too on the nose. But from then on, and like, it just turns into sort of isometric Resident Evil. Like, some zombies show up. There are zombie dogs. It's actually kind of funny because it really, like, it hits all those Resident Evil notes. You're just doing the same stuff you would do in a Resident Evil game. Like, you gotta sort of be careful about how you engage enemies because you have a limited supply of ammo and healing items and everything, and you're not like an incredibly capable marksman or whatever. But just the fact that it's in this kind of different isometric perspective, it's not really the typical sort of a cinematic Resident Evil perspective, or even like a over the shoulder third person kind of thing. It just has a completely different feel than sort of the survival horror games that it's based on, which is really interesting.
Because of that sort of perspective change?
I think so, yeah. It's just so different. You feel like it's much less immersive. And I'm not saying this in like as a negative, because in my case, like, maybe you don't want to play a really terrifying survival horror game. Maybe you like sort of the just the flavor of it, of being in this mysterious lab, and occasionally there are zombies roaming around. But, like, I don't want to get jump scared by dogs going through a window every 5 minutes. And just, I feel like the isometric perspective really removes a lot of the tension. So I found this completely playable. Maybe not the best choice for a spooky Saturday, because it wasn't really, like, at no point, I think, was I ever really scared. Like, sometimes a zombie would pop up unexpectedly and growl. I would be like, where did he come from? But then I would just, like, move my silly-looking little character around on the screen. and, take him out. And it was fine. So it's more of an action game almost than, I don't know, just the survival aspect from Resident Evil, like the older Resident Evils.
Yeah.
Which is funny because it really just looks like what would happen if you made a Resident Evil game, but it was kind of like almost in an XCOM perspective. So that's interesting. You solve a lot of, I guess, just sort of the classic survival horror style puzzles where, you're in this facility and eventually you escape from sort of the lab area into sort of a larger compound. But there's still, you run into these angel statues, and there you also see some like sort of cryptic riddles about how these angel statues have to be facing, or at one point you run into a door and instead of a lock, it's got like a plaque with like a flame on it. And you go, oh, well, I guess if I ever run into like a key that also has a a flame on it or something,
right,
maybe that's what goes in this door. But you just keep running into these to the extent that at one point, one of the characters is like, oh, you're talking to this guy on the walkie-talkie. And he says, oh, you got to head over to the, the botany lab or whatever. And then, force your way in somehow. And your guy just remarks like, oh, I wonder if I'm going to have to solve some weird puzzle to get into this place. I'm like, okay. So it's interesting that the characters are kind of self-aware that they're having to solve all these stupid puzzles over and over. But I feel like that was kind of a one-off. I was almost hoping, like, at that point, maybe they will just be fully conscious that they're in a survival horror video game and start remarking on all the other stuff.
Just break that fourth wall, yeah.
Yeah, because that would be a good time. That would be like if the Frog Detective guys made a Resident Evil game.
Well, that's interesting.
And when I say these are dumb puzzles, I mean it sort of in like an endearing way. Like, I don't think anybody plays a Resident Evil game and was like, oh yeah, remember when we had to put the 3 gems into that statue? That was great. But that's such a survival horror thing to do that it just somehow makes sense that you're just doing that all the time in this game.
Yeah.
So it really feels like, if you liked those older sort of survival horror style games and just the stuff you're doing in them, and you want to do that again, because I haven't really kept up with Resident Evil, but I don't know how many sort of weird puzzles you're doing in those at this point. It really sort of recaptures that old classic survival horror feel.
Yeah. Cool. It sounds like the developers at least had a good sense of what the vibe of those were like and what the structure of them was like and how it should be sort of played out.
Yeah.
Cool. There's a new game that came out just last week called Signalis. Have you heard of that?
Yeah. That one sounds like it is actually pretty demanding in terms of sort of how you ration your supplies and everything. It sounds like the difficulty is on par with those, like the first or second Resident Evil games.
Yeah, I've heard that as well. And the reviews have been very enthusiastic, but it is sort of very much kind of this old school PlayStation era, like survival horror game. So yeah, if you miss sort of the intensity of a Resident Evil, like Resident Evil 1 kind of experience or a Silent Hill kind of experience, Signalis seems to sort of like, again, have a good sense of what those sort of buttons were. And pushes them in a game that came out in 2022. So it's interesting that, I wonder if there is sort of a subset of video game developers right now, just sort of like, how do we drag survival horror into 2022?
Right.
Should it feel retro? Should it, I don't know what the other options are, but I like the idea of it maybe being a little more self-aware. I think that's kind of fun, but I like that as a kind of entertainment trope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like that was the intention from for most of the game. It seemed like it was just that one conversation. But I was like, oh, all right. I mean, I'll be honest, the writing is not especially good throughout, so that may have just been a case of somebody writing some weird thing for the character to say. But otherwise, it's like pretty much fine. Interesting, you mentioned the difficulty when you start off Heaven Dust. It gives you the option of playing a normal mode and also a casual mode. And just thinking about, all the issues with having to conserve ammo and everything, I thought, well, maybe I should play this on casual. Like, I don't really want to have to ration ammo. I kind of just want to get through this thing. but also maybe I'll just play it on normal and see how it goes. And it's, for the most part, it's like completely manageable. You're never really starved for ammo, so I can just imagine how it would be like on casual mode. They would just give you a machine gun or something.
It's just ammo boxes everywhere.
Yeah. There's like kind of a mild crafting system. You like find gunpowder and bullet shells, and you turn them into different types of ammo for your weapons that you pick up.
Oh.
So it's got a lot of these little elements that have appeared throughout the Resident Evil series at certain points. But it's just in this sort of like cutesy looking isometric package. So a weird take on Resident Evil, I suppose.
Yeah. I remember learning at some point that you could drag items on top of each other in Resident Evil and combine them somehow in like an early version of a crafting system, and like, oh, this changes everything.
Yeah. Well, in this it's the same deal on this. You just find the green herb, of course. And you're like, okay, immediately I know what that does. And then in the next room, you find the red herb, and you go, okay. See, they've played one of these games before. So sometimes it feels a little bit on the nose, but like it's fine.
Yeah. And I suspect that's what people are there for, right? I mean, to a degree.
Yeah, it's like, how can we make a Resident Evil game in this different style and, just skirt around enough so we don't get sued by Capcom?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Cool. Is there a Heaven Dust 1? It's surprising.
There is a Heaven Dust 1.
Okay.
And I know what you're going to ask. I did actually take a look at the Heaven Dust 1 page and was like, should I start with this one? And then there was a note on the Heaven Dust 2 page that it is a standalone experience. So I thought, okay, fine, I'll just play this one.
Perfect.
It seems like there are callbacks to Heaven Dust 1, so maybe if you have played that, some things you might appreciate more. It sounds like maybe the first Heaven Dust took place in a spooky mansion, which is like, okay, I guess they really just, I've said enough about how they're kind of ripping off Resident Evil, so I just thought that was hilarious. But no, I think, like, I haven't had any issues just starting with Heaven Dust 2.
Cool.
It's not the most, like, groundbreaking thing, I'd say, but, if you want kind of an alternate Resident Evil style game, maybe Village and Resident Evil 7 didn't do it for you, then maybe you'll find something here.
Yeah. I mean, there is something very specific about kind of the pace of those kind of PlayStation 1 like survival horror games. I think that, the controls aren't the best. Your resources are very limited. Save spaces are rare. So yeah, there's something about, again, that sort of feels like survival to that experience that, maybe is a little less missing from the modern Resident Evil games where, everybody's got a machine gun and a flak jacket. And
I have to say, I was, like you mentioned before, I went through quite a long list of spooky games to play this year. And it seems like there's a lot of effort to create stuff that is more in the vein or like the style of those old 32-bit games. And a lot of them actually veer towards, I feel like more the survival side, so you're not as well armed as you ended up being in the later Resident Evil games.
Cool.
And I thought, whoa, I mean, that's cool that they're doing that. But that was not really my favorite thing about those games. So playing this one, which seems to have distilled a lot of the other things that I liked about those games into this experience, which is not even especially scary, seems like maybe it's more my thing.
Well, good.
I kind of just wish the writing was a little better, and like the combat is fine, but it's still an interesting sort of Resident Evil throwback.
Well, cool. All right. Well, I mean, kudos to you, DJ, for a month of Spooky Saturdays.
Yeah, we did it. I had to say, so in retrospect, a lot of the games I played were not even very spooky. But, I mean, that's kind of, who's running Spooky Saturday? Oh, it's me, the guy who doesn't like scary games. So what do you expect?
You are the president and CEO of Spooky Saturday.
That's true. I should also throw out a quick note that I went back and finished the Excavation of Hobbs Barrow, and I really liked it. So, again, just another cool sort of spooky light game to check out. Cool. It was at the point, actually, I was hoping I had to get it finished by the time I had to put last week's show together. Was when I talked about it. And I considered, I hate when shows do this, but doing like a little cut-in to just give an update on whether the end was scary or not, because that was something I found. I was like, oh, this is not that scary.
Yeah.
And, you know, obviously, if you listen to last week's show, I didn't end up doing that. But I kind of feel like maybe it would be doing a disservice to people just telling people if a game that doesn't start out scary ends up being really scary. Because a lot of it is just the anticipation that things could be terrifying.
Sure.
So, along those lines, I'm not going to tell you how it ended up, but I did really enjoy it.
Well, good. Because my thing, DJ, is the anticipation of you not ruining the ending of video games.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't like to do that either.
Yeah, okay, good. That's what YouTube is for.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. At least then it's, by choice.
Right. It's consensual. Excellent. Well, let's wrap this thing up with another quick advertisement for Extra Life coming up this Saturday, November 5th. It's still the 5th, right? Is that accurate? Yeah, Saturday, November 5th.
All Saturday.
Yeah, we'll be streaming all day at twitch.tv/VGHangover and on our own Twitch sites?
Page, channel, whatever.
Channel. That's what the kids call it. Go to VGHangover.com/extra life for lots of info on that. Definitely drop by our Discord, drop by our Twitter. We will be hyping all weekend. Yeah, we would love to chat with you while we play video games and raise money for this awesome charity.
Yeah, it'd be great to see people in the chat or wherever.
Cool. If you need any more video game hangover in your brain, you can always follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/VGHangover. And you can get show notes and links and tell us what you thought about this episode at VGHangover.com. Join us on Discord. We mentioned that. You get a link to that at VGHangover.com. Reviews help us immensely. You can go to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, any place else you can get a podcast. And if there's an option to give us stars or write a review, please do so. And maybe help us out by telling your friends about the show.
Yeah, we really appreciate that. Helps us spread the word. Bring in new listeners. That'd be great. We want to give thanks again to Saria Lemus this week for our intro and outro music. If you want to hear more of our stuff, you can go to pettypanol.bandcamp.com and download that entire discography. Just do it. Just buy everything.
Woo. Awesome. We'll be back next week. Until then, this is Randy Dickinson.
This is DJ Ross.
Thanks for listening to Video Game Hangover. Goodbye.
Good night.
See you.